Well, we did it, Janie. We are officially the last people on Earth to have seen Zootopia 2, which, according to most everyone, is the greatest movie of all time, maybe, perhaps.
Hey, I can't believe we watched the whole thing.
Well, yeah, I can't believe we spent an hour and a half watching a movie. That's incredible.
That's insane.
And look, and even more, we watched all of it, which seemed really blew people away. And I didn't even poo my pants once. I assume neither did you, because I imagine I'd be able to tell. But
I don't know. I can't remember.
oh, yeah.
It's all a blur. I was so enticed by the adventures of Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps.
Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde struggle to work together as partners. After a bungled bust of a criminal, Judy seeks to redeem her partnership by catching a snake in the act of stealing a book from the famous Linksleys, the founding family of the city. However, when Judy and Nick get framed as co-conspirators, the two's friendship is tested as they get thrusted into a mystery involving the dark history behind Zootopia. Well, Janie, what did you think of Zootopia 2, given that we have fairly controversial opinions on it that go against the grain of the typical audience member, at least so it seems? We'll probably start with what we liked rather than getting right into the nitty-gritty, which we will do later. So, what did you like about it?
I liked Paulbert.
Oh yeah, I liked, yeah, he was so fluffy and cool. And I liked Benjamin Clawhauser, who is also fluffy. And I guess that's enough to make it a good movie to a furry such as ourselves. So that's the end of the review. It's the best movie ever.
I hate criticism.
We're already starting.
I'm gonna get canceled.
Well, I think the most base thing that I did like about it was there were good payoffs. Stuff like the snake, Gary the snake, needing a warm environment is something that comes into play and actually really helps him out later in the nearing the climax. So I think that in terms of setting up payoffs, the movie was actually pretty efficient and rewarding in that sense.
I like that this movie trusts you to have watched the first movie before.
Yeah, that's exactly something that I really liked about it. And I can't think of that many sequels that are too reliant on it. There's little things like Frou Frou, who ended the first movie pregnant, and I had to remind you of this one, the Linksleys who, and this is not spoilers like at all, who are bad guys, intimidate the mayor using Judy and Nick's track record of taking down 2 mayors.
Do you know how many mayors they've already destroyed?
1, 2. I got up to 2.
Which you actually had forgotten because it's easy to forget that Mayor Bellwether stepped up from assistant mayor or vice mayor.
They don't really show that much in the first movie.
Yeah, so this is, even though it's been 10 years and gosh, there were quite a lot of things that relied on your knowledge of the first movie. Like I actually do want to cite my notes because I was pretty impressed. Stuff like Flash 100-yard dash, I guess as Nick calls him, which was just an ending gag in Zootopia, is more of a plot point here. Like he actually ends up saving them in this one. There's also the carrot pin from the first movie, which is a very big symbol of Nick and Judy's partnership, considering that was the big object that solved the case. So it's used very importantly in the movie as a symbol of their partnership. Beyond that, Judy as a character has this hero bunny complex. After her first big case getting her name in the papers, she feels she really has to live up to this reputation she set for herself, always having to have a big bust for the next case. And similarly, Nick, although not exactly as much as Judy is impacted by the first movie, Nick is less of a jerk from the first movie.
Yeah.
Which, that is to say that both Nick and Judy have changed. I particularly like Judy having this sort of psychological hero complex with her as, well, these characters have evolved. It's not just reusing the same setup in terms of them and putting them in this movie. They've moved on and progressed since then. And I was really pleased to see this movie utilize the first movie. It really validated it. It mattered. So even though it's been 10 years, I was really glad that it picked up like they never left, really.
Surely it's just been a few months within the universe.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt that way. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since the original, so it felt rather nice. I imagine that regardless of our feelings about it, it's fairly seamless hopping from the first movie into this one.
Pun intended.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I feel like I was gonna say something. And I don't know, movies were kind of a lot better 10 years ago.
We'll get to, do we have any more positives?
I like Nick in this.
Yes, I did like Nick.
They have him act more like his first movie personality with the whole...
Well, he's a jokester, as in...
Yeah. Well, they bring back the whole defense mechanism thing as a way to explain why he's, being so quippy.
That's one thing, probably one of my favorite things about this movie is that the characters, Nick and Judy, I already said there's a bit of a psychological aspect to Judy. And, to that degree, Nick, especially since within the beginning of the movie, they have this group therapy scene. And they actually do end up having a bit of psychology imbued within why the characters behave as they do. So that's probably one of my favorite things beyond just how much it validates the first movie. It does feel like an evolved world. Nick and Judy are very believable as characters, which you need for the main conflict, which is salvaging their partnership, which I think was done really excellently in terms of this movie. The scene that I think has the most impact is when they drop the pen, which symbolizes their partnership, and also when Judy reaches for the mysterious biker saving her rather than Nick, which epitomizes how she's lost her values of friendship, that she values solving the case more than her partner. And it's a very as important and a well-executed midpoint for the movie to establish just how far the character has strayed from her partnership.
Yeah.
I mentioned world earlier, and that's another thing that I liked about this movie. The first Zootopia took place within 48 hours, and I do think that we saw quite a lot of Zootopia, which is evidence in how one thing that technically did work for this movie is that surprisingly in Zootopia 1, we did not see any reptiles.
You don't realize how much of the animal kingdom you don't see in the first movie when you're watching it.
Yeah, it's really surprising, and that's actually a key plot point, the reptiles and Zootopia. So it's something that surprisingly worked for the movie, and you don't really think about it watching the first one. It really shows just how much you can show in a movie, and technically how little, and still have it have that depth, as if you're like, yep, that's every animal ever.
Yep.
But even stuff like as simple as when Nick is going home and Zootopia, the city, is given this beautiful sunset hue. I realized that there were different sides of Zootopia you can portray, and even just as simple as a time of day to add that different feel. And that's not even discussing the different lands, such as the marshlands that they go to, or one of my favorites, which is nearing the end of the movie, where they go to the inner wall where they manage the weather system, which kind of reminded me a bit of Portal when you go into the walls of Aperture. It's a weird comparison.
That's a reference.
Yeah, but it's an apt comparison to me because it's interesting to see how the nice city works and then you go into the inner workings of it, which if I want to give it more credit, then it probably should have can symbolize going into the depths of the history of the city. But I'm giving them too much credit, I think.
The seedy underbelly. I think the actors are pretty on point. I'm wondering if I should just say something about the animation. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. You really do want to pet them, huh?
Just Paulbert.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, he is a kitty, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, he's big and fluffy. I can't stress this enough that it's still a movie made by real people, like actual human hands, at a time when big tech is trying to push AI and really try and strip the humanity out of creativity. I really do appreciate that something like this did do well. I appreciate that this did better than the Lion King remake.
I do appreciate the work put into this, especially because as an animated movie, this is beautiful. I mentioned the lighting, such as the sunset earlier, but even stuff from that to the red lighted seedy bar they go into where they see all these reptiles and this low down sort of hangout. The environments are varied, and I think compared to the first movie, that is most seen in the lighting, and I appreciate that. I do think it definitely is a step up in terms of animation.
The movie definitely goes for it with these very eye-catching, flashy action scenes.
Which we'll probably get more into when we discuss the pacing, which is another distinction between this and the first movie. But well, I guess given you already complimented the action scenes, I feel like that's probably our last ounce of positivity we have for this movie. Unfortunately, would you say? I think the rest of my points are complaints.
I think, sadly, I really feel like this movie is not really a mystery movie. Like,
what do you mean feel? This movie isn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's no feeling about that. Yeah. I think the point where I fully realized that this wasn't a mystery was nearing the end of the first act. They confront Gary the Snake, who has the book that they believe he is a criminal thief trying to steal, and immediately, almost insultingly straightforward in terms of a script, he exposits pretty much the main positions of the characters of this movie. I'm innocent. I'm the good guy. This will prove Snake's innocence. The Lynxleys, they're the bad guy.
We aren't the bad guys. They are. And this journal holds the secret that will prove it.
Pretty much spelling it out for the audience within the end of the first act.
You know where I think it really spells things out for the audience? I think it's when Judy gets that matchbox.
Actually, I have a whole point about the matchbox, but similarly, actually, let's discuss where the matchbox leads, which is
A minute later.
Yeah, it's almost a minute later where she finds all the pictures where this lodge, which is apparently a snake hideout, and she more or less repeats exactly what Gary the Snake said.
Well, the thing to me is that, this flower, where can we get this flower? And they just happen to be right in the right place at the right time. And two goat tourists come down and say, oh, that only grows here at the top of this mountain where there's an abandoned hotel and it used to be a snake hideout.
Is there anything else up there?
Old honeymoon lodge. What is closed for a long time was hideout for snakes.
I know this somehow.
Yeah, these tourists, at least we're pretty sure they're tourists, give the detectives exactly the info they need. It's absurd. And in fact, that goes into probably my biggest issue, which, as if the fact that there was a lacking intrigue because the plot is more or less spelled out for them within the very first few scenes of Gary, the structure of it eliminates any sense that these are detectives, any sense of mystery. And that is not just in terms of, because I can accept that this is not going for a mystery, but what I cannot accept is how it's structured in such a way that the protagonists have very limited agency. I'm gonna have to consult my notes on this one because I kind of go over specific plot beats and you will see what I mean. After Judy and Nick are framed as co-conspirators, they run away and they are kidnapped by Mr. Big, the gangster. And then what happens? They tell them exactly where to go to find more info on reptiles, which leads them to Nibbles. They give them Nibbles' exact card, and then Nibbles directs them to this reptile bar, and then after one chase later, they end up exactly at the scene which we find most egregious. They end up exactly where they need to be. They find a matchbox with a flower on it, and rather than being detectives and finding where the flower grows, they're just right in front of exactly where it goes. Convenient. This case practically fell into their laps. So how does the story develop? They are kidnapped by Mr. Big, so they have no choice in that. Mr. Big tells them where to go, and then Nibbles tells them, in fact leads them where to go, and then after a chase they just end up exactly where they need to be. This is the most railroaded plot ever. The detectives do absolutely no detective work. It's either other characters telling them where to go, or ending up exactly where they need to be. So beyond just not being a mystery, which I technically can't accept, the characters have so little influence on the plot's development itself. It's really insulting of a movie, especially by that mountain scene.
But Aaron, they need to spell it out for the iPad kids who aren't paying attention.
I guess the rest of my complaints for the story pertain more to the overall world of Zootopia, but I might hold off on that because that's one that we really have to talk through, because I can imagine some counter arguments here, and it goes into this comparison with Zootopia 1 that is a little bit heavy that I'll probably hold off on it. I think now we should talk about the pacing of the movie, which is very different from the first one.
Did you feel like the pacing was too fast?
Yes, I did. Compared to the first one, which I'll compare this to a bit of the first one, which did have excitement in it, like almost every movie does, but recall certain scenes like when they were sneaking around into this parking lot where one of the animals was kidnapped in a van. It's a more slower paced scene with a bit different kind of tension. Not excitement, but it's a tension, almost sort of stealthy scene, which the first movie has like at least a couple of. And then you go into when they're kidnapped by Mr. Big in the first movie, and it's more of a comedic character scene. It has that sort of variety in pace, or more like tones, where I feel like I'm watching a movie that is living, that changes in terms of emotions. But here you will notice that almost every scene has to end with the main characters getting chased.
I mean, that was a positive I brought up.
Yeah, and I do think that the chase scenes and the action scenes as a positive utilize all of their creative environments. I think that they utilize them to their full extent, and they are good action scenes to the point where I think one of the end scenes near the climax is probably one of the most exciting scenes put to Western animations. And while these scenes are good in terms of action and they are exciting, after you end every scene with a chase action scene, it's not exciting, it's exhausting. I got tired of the redundancy of this.
Kind of a shame that I have to turn this positive into a negative.
Yeah, it's kind of like too much of a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like having your cake and eating it too.
Part of the reason why I have such a callous attitude towards these well-executed action scenes isn't just because of their abundance, but because of their relation to the story. In terms of how I feel, I see it as little more than the more frantic you wave your hands, the more you distract the audience from how thin the plot is.
You gotta jiggle those keys.
Yeah, I was thinking of that analogy as well.
I do feel like a lot of kids' media now is aimed at kids who aren't really fully paying attention.
Yeah, I just have to think, even though I really like the characters of this movie, I like Nick and Judy's thing by trying to work better as partners. In fact, this is one thing where I will say one of the best scenes in the movie is probably when it has a character moment such as the first one, when Nick is jailed and he's talking about how much he regrets, how he wishes that he could let Judy know how much he cares for her. in such a way that's subtle enough not to immediately set every Wild Hop shipper screaming in the theaters.
It isn't worth her dying for because I don't want to lose her.
That's a big positive of the first movie, and it's really lacking in this one. The character moments.
Yeah, to the point where, well, this is not going into spoilers, but this is a bit of an ending scene. Once Judy and Nick finally reconvene to set aside each other's differences, I don't consider that spoilers because really, what else did you expect? It skirts the line between cutesy and rushed. Nick and Judy air out everything they would have in a successful group therapy. It's cutesy, it's funny that they do it all so quickly, but at the same time in a movie that is so severely lacking in moments like this, I can't help but characterize it as a lack of commitment to the characters, which I just see this movie as lacking.
It feels like a joke.
That's where they kind of play it off. They play it off a bit like a joke when really you wish you could have gotten a bit more of this. I think actually I would have liked it because it is a bit of a clever thing to link back to the group therapy.
Yeah.
It's just when the movie presents this as your meal, as this is the substance, I want more. Going from the pacing back to a bit of the writing, I'm going to talk about the world building, which the world of Zootopia is so lush. You have so many animals, so many different environments. You really can do a lot with this world. So that's why a sequel was so enticing to me. However, even from before this hit the silver screen, I was skeptical. And that goes into how there was, one of the things in the trailer was that there was not a snake seen in Zootopia in years, which piqued my interest, as it's meant to. But not only that, with snakes, reptiles are sort of a fringe culture. Like, they have to meet up in like underground bars, and they don't really have a land to themselves. And that's something where I was skeptical of it because of how Zootopia within the universe is known as being all accepting in terms of its creatures, which this is going to be a complicated matter, especially because of Zootopia 1's context and how it played into an allegory. So this is going to be more how Zootopia 1 played into this allegory successfully, which Zootopia 2 doesn't even really attempt to have much of a theme. But regardless, that world that was set up for the first movie remains. Now, while I complimented this in terms of that Zootopia 1 and this movie lucked out because Zootopia 1 did not have any reptiles. So superficially, it seems cohesive with this movie, that they are sort of this underground culture. However, within the actual written context of Zootopia 1, which I find more important, that's where I hold my issues. Because the first movie, within the actual written context of the first movie, stuff like Judy's, of course, her idolization of Zootopia being accepting of all kinds. And even during a later scene during this protest when Gazelle, the singer, professes her adoration for Zootopia being an accepting place in her eyes.
Zootopia is a unique place. It's a crazy, beautiful, diverse city where we celebrate our differences.
Which makes the idea of there being no reptiles around really suspicious. Like, one, how do they really think it's truly this accepting a place? And this is where I anticipate an argumentative counterpoint on fans' parts, where they say, well, of course, Zootopia was always about racism and how it's hidden and falls under the cracks. But let's look at how Zootopia 1 actually did that allegory and how it actually did it successfully as opposed to Zootopia 2. Stuff that supported the racism in Zootopia 1 is stuff like when Judy says that the predators have this thing within them, when she gives that big speech that sets off a huge bunch of issues nearing the end of the movie. And that you can link that to a lot of other stuff, like, fear-mongering, and the idea that there's something within them that turns them wild. You can talk about how that appeals to essentialist philosophy. You can bring in, I forget if she uses the specific words of genes, but beyond essentialism, that also links to determinist philosophy. So there are certain ideologies that are linked with this issue in Zootopia 1, where it's far more believable how the town can be overswept with the racism within it. It's presented in a believable but still understandable, digestible way for children to digest within the first movie. But it doesn't forfeit intellect because there's a lot of different aspects in it, such as how the characters like Judy and Bellwether, and even Nick by the end, by accepting the badge, that controversial scene, more or less seek equality via power, or at least levels of authority. So that is to say that Zootopia 1 supported the way the town behaved in a believable, more realistic manner. And that's not even talking about how the mass amount of predators in Zootopia 1 going wild. You can understand how this fear can overtake the town. But what led to snakes and reptiles all being pushed out? It was one crime involving one snake. And I think the movie knows that having the whole town turn on reptiles because of one snake, just one snake, one specific snake, not even a whole species, not even venomous creatures, just all of reptiles. I think the movie knows that having the whole town turn on them is hard to swallow, which is why they add a little bit of dialogue so you can't try to criticize that, which is when the reptiles say, "We left."
No mammals trusted any reptile after that. That's why we all left.
So that's how the movie tries to overcome that flaw, that it would be really obvious that the town has racism issues if it just pushed a whole species out with the line, "We decided to leave." And it just comes off so weak because you can truly see that it's not really that. And compared to the more intellectual way the first movie handled it, this movie's way of handling a whole species and a whole group of animals not being in Zootopia just comes off so cartoonishly flat compared to the more intricate societal concepts of the first movie.
Can we get into spoiler territory?
Yeah, especially since I'm kind of glad that I could handle the more heavier topic, but I know we both are pretty confident about how we feel about the spoilers, particularly the twist villain.
Another twist villain?
Yeah, I know, a big shock. It's almost like it's part of the formula. So do you want to say who the twist villain is?
It's Paubert, my favorite boy.
Yeah, which led you to certain feelings about it.
Very mixed feelings.
For me, structurally, I was not a fan of Paubert being the bad guy, not necessarily in terms of character, although that kind of comes into play a bit later. But structurally, Paubert's motives, which are he wants to be appreciated by his family. He's working undercover to try to get this deed that proves that Gary's family was the true founders of Zootopia, and the Linksleys just forged a document and took all the credit for themselves. So he's trying to get to the document, the official real document, first to destroy it and become someone within his family.
When I get to his great-grandma's home and I burn the original patent, I'll finally be something in my family.
This is explained within 10 seconds of exposition. There's not really scenes of him being underappreciated or anything. It's a really weak twist.
I feel like if I went back, there wouldn't be much indication that they were building up to this.
Yeah, I feel like if he did, there wouldn't be much either, which I'm surprised because thinking of it structurally, you can tell the writers really didn't want you to think Paubert was the bad guy, which is a good thing for a twist, but you really liked him, and they really played up his likable awkwardness strong within his first introduction. I'm surprised they didn't have him being pushed around by his family to try to foreshadow his motives, especially since that would really play into a pity of the character that would let you empathize with him and like him more, which they really were strong-handed about within his first few 5 seconds, which are important because he only, outside of that, he only really shows up nearing the last half of the movie. In fact, this is another weird thing. Gary is a funny, cute character, but he so rarely interacts with Judy or even Nick.
He's on the poster.
Yeah, and the trailers made a big deal about him. They got a funny star, who I do not know the name of, but I will ADR him in here.
Kê Huy Quan.
Yeah, so I love.
Kê Huy Quan.
But he's not really put much to well use here in terms of interacting with the other characters. He's very limited here, and surprisingly so. Perhaps to the movie's detriment, would you say?
I'd say so. Well, I liked that Paulbert was playing against his type, because it was a subversion.
Yeah, he wasn't just a part of that family.
I liked the idea that he grew up in a bad family and learned to be better anyway. He learned the right thing anyway and was better than them, but then it felt like that was kind of snatched away with the twist.
This is one thing where you could argue for or against it, I suppose, but this is one thing where I feel the twist feels really obligatory. And that's not just because I feel like the basis of it is weak. I mean, we don't really see him much outside of, we really don't see him much. Even though he's a twist, I feel like we see him more as a villain than as anything else.
Yeah.
So it's not like we really feel too betrayed, which is probably why the writers really played up his empathetic awkwardness in the first act, because there wasn't much else to his character.
Yeah. It really feels like he's the twist villain just to have a conflict for the third act.
Yeah, and even though admittingly the third act, I do like the climax. It's great visually. I feel like his being a twist is also proof of just the lack of intrigue in this movie. Like, they have to have this plot beat at this point because it's been codified into the Disney formula since Frozen and Zootopia, which I feel like in retrospect, people look down upon because they started the twist villain, when really, I think the twist villain is done well in both those movies. It's just in subsequent works that, like such as this, where I think it's either unnecessary, but I would prefer it if it were actually done well, but it's not here.
They already proved they could do it well with Bellwether in the first movie.
Exactly, I think Bellwether was definitely a better twist villain, and it also helps that that movie substantiated the need for a twist because it was a mystery.
This one's not. But yeah, you actually get to know Bellwether in the first movie as well. We really don't know much about Paulbert. It's not just because I like him as well. I really do think it's just they shouldn't have been a twist villain. I think it's really weak. It's something Disney does seems to do every movie now anyway.
Yeah.
So I would have just ditched it. We already have the other Linksleys as the big threat in this movie.
And it does help to have a sort of individualized threat, especially since, well, you know what? If you wanted to have a twist villain, you probably shouldn't have had Gary explain this is the good guys, me, they're the bad guys. You know, if you wanted to salvage intrigue in your story. This actually goes into a little bit of a positive I have about the movie, which is, I'll go into, the third act, a little positive I have about it, which is, it's atypical structurally, which surprised me because the twist felt so by the numbers and forced. It's that they have this huge, really impressive climax that is surprisingly suspenseful. This is a surprisingly suspenseful and actiony children's animated feature. I like that about it, but interestingly, this is not the climax. The climax is a chase to Gary's ancestors' document. And on top of the tower, afterwards, Judy and Nick sort out all their differences, and they are good partners again. Surprisingly, afterwards, the action scene then references The Shining, which is funny.
But Aaron, they went through the Shining maze.
It was pretty funny in that sense, and I do say funny because for a movie with so many chase scenes and it can be quite tense, the real climax is more of a victory lap. It kind of celebrates their renewed partnership and is more comedic, and that's something that I wouldn't expect from a movie, especially one that indulges in its action as much as this. So I admire it for being different like that, being a victory lap and a rather pleasure to watch there.
Also, Paubert fell to his death and somehow came back anyway.
I guess the snow cushioned his fall. I really did think he died. That was something I almost really cheered the movie for, because I
thought it was a Clayton or a Gaston.
Yeah, I think I brought this up when I was talking about Tarzan before. Don't you miss in kids' movies when they would just straight up die, when a villain would just straight up die?
I mean, I'm glad he didn't die.
Okay, because you can fix him.
Because I can fix him.
Yeah, you can fix him.
Exactly.
I think probably the last spoiler I want to discuss involves the overall theme of the movie, which is not really too well defined. I mean, it's about as simple as you can get when you have this whole species of animals is not allowed in town. It's about as basic as you can get from that. But one thing that Paubert says, which technically utilizes the twist, even though we contest how much it should have been, they at least try to make the twist necessary for the theme, which is when Judy says, "You could be different than your family, Paubert," and he says,
I don't want to be different.
Making sense that with all these different animals should celebrate differences. So Paubert wanting to conform, bad. That works well in terms of the theme, but I think it competes with the partnership of Nick and Judy, where by the end of the climax, they're on the same page every step of the way, which the climax kind of plays off of the opening chase scene, except now they work together in tandem. They are on the same page. And I don't think these two stories mesh together well. Paubert, who is a bad guy because he doesn't want to be different, and Nick and Judy, who solve the plot by being on the same page. They don't do things like, oh, I have to do this way, you should trust me on this. That would have been something if it was like, okay, I'll trust you to be different and to do this your way instead of my way. And oh, the same vice versa, oh, I'll trust you to do this your way. But instead they're on the same exact page, and I don't think that meshes well with the celebrate your differences theme of the movie.
I thought that's where the movie was gonna go, and it didn't.
Yeah, it's weird, and especially since it's not a bad theme. It's as simple as you can get with, the base premise of what the movie has set up, which is basic anyway. And it's a shame that it conflicts with the relationship between Nick and Judy, which I believe is a strength of the movie. So there are these two good ideas that how they come together in the climax, they don't necessarily mesh together. And that's not to say it's flawed. I think if you wanted them to be coherent with each other, I think it should be, oh, I'll trust you to do this way, Nick. Oh, I'll trust you to, be different this way, Judy. I think that would have been better for the theme.
Aren't you glad they made the racism palatable and digestible for you?
I think this is a point that I'll probably get a bit of flack on. The people criticize the first movie, which I've just explained in my world building bit, how the first movie does its racist themes way better than this movie. But here's why I think a lot of people like Zootopia 2. Because it doesn't get into that. It ignores that. It plays it safe. Oh no, we don't want to make you uncomfortable by attacking this concept. Let's play it cartoonishly simple. No snakes allowed? That's bad. That's as simple a portrayal of racism as you can get. A far cry from the more in-depth portrayal of the society that was in Zootopia 1. People considering this better than Zootopia 1, part of the reason why I think that, well, aside from it being more flashier, is because it doesn't address a controversial topic. And because of it, there's less risk to make the viewer uncomfortable. But here's my belief. It is great when a movie makes a viewer uncomfortable because it's not just feeding and satisfying exactly what the viewer wants. And by making a viewer uncomfortable, it opens up a discussion with them internally to assess how they feel on something. A movie shouldn't always be like Zootopia 2, where you really don't have to think during it. The discomfort that some people feel watching the first movie, which I don't really necessarily think is... I don't feel uncomfortable with the first movie, but I like that it can make some people uncomfortable because that's exactly what Disney doesn't want. And that's
evidenced by this movie.
Yeah, exactly. I think back to that recent Pixar that what was it the president of Pixar?
It was Pete Docter, the CEO.
Yes. What did he say?
He said, "We're making movies, not paying for therapy."
Which is just the epitome of showing, yes, you're making a popcorn movie, just don't think about our artwork. Which I like that Zootopia 1, as evidenced by how some people feel uncomfortable during certain bits, it makes you think. It makes you think. It's not like Zootopia 2 where you don't really have to think. It's so simple. It's such a simple watch from beginning to end.
We know that kids are smarter than that. They can handle the themes in Zootopia 1.
Yes, they can. So I don't think that Zootopia 2 was obligated to discuss such themes.
Yeah.
But I think that once these allegories have been established in Zootopia 1, it's the same world. It's hard not to think of these same allegories within Zootopia 2. So even if it doesn't play into it, it's really awkwardly simple about it.
Well, I remember seeing Zootopia 1 and it came out at such a convenient time.
It was very topical, yes.
Yeah, and I don't think it even set out to. It just, because these movies start production so early. It was just such a happy coincidence.
I think Zootopia 1 still has aged well. I think some people think it doesn't, but I think it has aged well. Will this one age well? Yes, because it says nothing.
I mean, we watched Zootopia 1 last year. It was, well, not even last year, 5 months ago.
Yeah.
I still really like it. I don't really understand people who think this one's better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And since we're kind of going into our overall thoughts, I'll try to reel us back into themes, which the movie tries to pretend it says something, which after the first movie it doesn't. And I think it says so little in this movie anyway, when Nick goes on about this monologue about differences between animals, which feels practically plagiarized off Judy's ending monologue in the first movie.
Hey, glass half full, we all have a lot in common.
We would see that our differences don't really make any difference at all.
And the more we try to understand one another, the more exceptional each of us will be.
Maybe if we just talked to each other, if we just tried to understand one another.
Even when it has something to say, it's just from the first movie.
Oh, since we're nearing the end of the review, maybe we should mention the end of the movie, like the very end, because we waited past the credits because we knew something would be there.
Yeah.
Yep.
There certainly was something there. Judy puts her little carrot recorder pen down, and then you see a feather fly down onto the ground.
The fact that this movie broke box office records, we're gonna get another. And I'm sure because the money's there and businesses play it safe, it'll follow the formula of this movie. So I'm predicting it'll be like, what? there was racism against birds too.
They put racism in the sky?
Yeah. Yeah.
Birdtopia?
The end credits was almost like an insult to me, because it was like, okay, we're just gonna get more of this, I feel like. And I don't want more of Zootopia 2, which is a shame, because after Zootopia 1, I wanted more. It didn't even, I'm not even begging it to play into some higher social theme. I think you can just have a fun adventure. But like I said, I think the allegories of the first movie inhibit it from being a fun adventure, because that doesn't go away once you see it in this movie. It inhibits this movie from being a fun adventure, and well, that just seems to be what they want to give you, just more popcorn flicks, which would be fine, but I think that you have to actually develop more of a mystery, more of an intriguing plot.
I think it's reasonable to expect a little bit more from Disney.
Yeah.
You know, the powerhouse of animation.
So that's about my thoughts on Zootopia 2. Outside of the, albeit fun action scenes, in terms of substance, there's little to sink your teeth into. Even if admittedly I did like the stuff between Nick and Judy, I wish it could have been in a better plot, and better held together narrative overall.
It might seem like we've been a bit critical of this movie, but
yeah.
But really, I mean, if you just look, like, I do think just as a fun romp,
yeah,
it is fine. You know, maybe even, I mean, like, I'll say it's good. I'll even say it's good as a fun romp.
Yeah, I know that we were a bit critical of it, but really at the end of the day, and I don't necessarily like giving star ratings like this, because I think in terms of recommending a movie, your mileage may vary. There is no objective number or grade I can really give a movie. I'd say it's probably around 3 stars. It's like a 6 out of 10 about.
Yeah.
To maybe, if I'm being a bit mean, around a 5 out of 10. It's not a bad movie. It's just kind of the context of what it has to live up to, almost like how Judy has to live up to herself from the first movie. So my criticism of this movie probably reflects more of the context of this being a Disney movie, of this being a sequel to a great Disney movie, a great movie in general, which is the first one. And as such, I was disappointed in it. And I'm sure it doesn't help. You can say I'm being a contrarian because of this, I guess, but it's box office success. I can't help but wish that something with more meaning, something that was more than just throwing flashy scenes at the screen, was a success, because all that means is we're gonna get more of it.
Well, if they do a third one, we're gonna have to be there.
Yes, we will. Honestly, and I will say, we're gonna be a bit upfront. I think part of the reason why we are a little bit more charged with this one, perhaps with our negatives, could be to do with the movie's success. I think to some degree, as much as I don't want to say this, I am confident in my opinions and my assessment of a movie, as you are. But, you know, I can't help but feel a little bit of jealousy, being the kind of person who goes, I didn't really like that movie so much, and both of us are met with, oh, this movie was great, you know.
This movie's better than the first, and I've watched it, and I'm like, really?
I don't know why. I guess because it's made more palatable, and it's not always best to be an audience pleaser. I like that Zootopia 1 asks the tough questions and can make some people sit a bit uncomfortably.
I do get it, because the world is not in a great place right now, and sometimes you just want to pretend you're not there. I understand, like, a movie you can just turn your brain off for. Not that it's that dumbed down. It is a popcorn flick at the end of the day. And there's really nothing wrong with that. It just has to live up to a much better movie, in my opinion.
Overall, as a movie, yeah, it's just okay. And how about we wrap this up? We already upset every furry who hates us, and let's try not to bring up how we didn't like the Super Mario movie, because then we can't have furries and Nintendo fans at our throat. So
I can please furries again. I can have Pauber and Nick Wilde kiss me at the same time. I can fix this. I can fix him.
What a great note to end on. Thank you for joining me on this video.
Please don't end there.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I guess we'll end here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me to your house.
Yeah, you know where I live.
I do. Let me give you the address.
Oh gosh, let's wrap this. Let's wrap this up. Okay. Thank you. Subscribe, like if you want. I guess. Thank you for watching. See ya.
This is awful.